You know, every now and then, I think you might like to hear something from us. Nice, easy. There's just one thing. Job down in the city. You see, we never, ever do nothing. Working for the man nice, every night and easy. Day. We always do it. Never lost nice, 1 minute rough. And now we're going to take the beginning of this song and do it easy. But then we're going to do the finish. Rough. Proud Mary, the way we do. Proud Mary. And we're rolling, ooh, rolling, ooh, rolling on the river. Listen to the story. Left a good job down in the city, working for the man every night and day. And I never lost 1 minute of sleep, and I was worried about the way that things might have been. That big wheel keep on turning, proud Mary keep on burning, and we're rolling, 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 yeah, rolling, rolling on the river, the river. Ain't a lot of place in Memphis. I pumped a lot of change down in New Orleans, but I never saw the good side of the city until I hitched a ride on the riverboat queen. The big wheel keep on turning, proud Mary keep on burning, and we're rolling, 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 yeah, rolling, rolling on the river. The river. Say we're rolling, 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 yeah, rolling, rolling on the river. The river. I left a good job in the city, working for the man every night and day. And I never lost a minute sleeping, worrying about the way things might have been. Big wheel keep on turning, proud Mary keep on burning, rolling, rolling, rolling on the river. So we're rolling, rolling, rolling on the river.
All right, there you go, y'all. One of my favorite lip sync songs to do. If you don't know who Tina Turner is, man, go find out. All right, let's get going today, kids. Like we said, we're learning about what we call today Indian boarding schools. Okay, talked about that hopefully in the warm up with you. Let me catch my breath. Okay, obviously, Colorado, we are lucky, although our history is a little sad too, in that we have quite a bit of influence still today of American Indian cultures. The Ute tribe, if you look here in Colorado, was probably one of the more powerful mountain tribes in America, in the American Indian nation. The Arapaho, the Cheyenne, also very influential in Colorado, along with the Kiowa and the Comanche. So what we're going to talk about today is culture and what happened to their culture and why maybe it happened to their culture. Okay, so first thing first, you've got that notes catcher. On your notes catcher, first big vocabulary word we're going to work on today is the one we're focusing on, is the word assimilation. The process by which a minority group or culture comes to resemble a dominant group or assume the values and behaviors and beliefs of another group. Okay? Pause the video and copy that definition down. Okay, Now that you've copied down that definition, question for you, don't write it down yet, this is just a thinking question. Is assimilation chosen or forced? When a minority group starts to resemble the dominant group, in other words, when a small group starts to look like the big group, which is what assimilation essentially means, is that usually forced or chosen? Okay. Answer is, what you need to write in your notes catcher, is it's usually both, right? Some assimilation is chosen, some assimilation is forced, right? You think about if I chose to immigrate to Mexico, and I learned to speak Spanish, I learned to make ceviche, and that would be my choice to assimilate. But you will also have such things as forced assimilation. If we go look back at American history, obviously African Americans, their ancestors were forced to assimilate. They were brought to this country and forced to learn English. They were forced to become American, even though they weren't allowed to be American. That would be forced assimilation. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. First things first, we're going to look at some photos today. Okay? In the late 1800s, show you this photo. In the late 1800s, the American nation decided that the way of dealing with all the American Indians who were living still in the United States was to start to assimilate them, to try to make them essentially American. Right? And so one of the ways in which they did this, there were several ways. One way, they taught them to farm. They tried to give them land and teach them to farm. The truth behind that is they gave them the worst land and didn't really teach them anything to farm. And many American Indians were just stuck basically on crappy, terrible land without their tribe and couldn't survive. And so many of them, that's when reservations became more popular, basically a place to store the Indians. But one of the other ways to assimilate American Indians was what were called Indian boarding schools. And they're what you see in front of you here. There were schools, sometimes built in old military barracks, so old places where soldiers used to live, okay, where they would take American Indian students away from their families, okay, from multiple tribes, and they would teach them, they would educate them, not just like a normal education like you would get, but an education more about how to be American. And unfortunately, in many ways, this also meant how to be not American Indian, okay? So we're gonna look at some photos here, and I want you to just see so I'm gonna show you before and after photos. A lot of these American Indians, when they first came into the school, they would take their photo as they were, and then after they'd been there a while, they'd take their photo after. Okay, we'll talk about why they did this. Here's your first one. Okay. In the notes catcher, I'm gonna do this one with you. I'll do this one with you a little bit. Okay, we're gonna write some things down. Okay, you need to write down what changes you see in the Indian students in these boarding schools. Okay, what did they change, or what was changed about them, forced to be changed? Because this would be probably forced assimilation, definitely. Okay, so just take a second, pause the video, and look at it. Okay, now write some ideas down in your notes catcher. What have you noticed changes? Okay, let me get my notes catcher out for you. One of the things I always notice in that picture, right? Oops, to go back to it, is, obviously hair and clothes stick out, but what always sticks out to me is skin color, okay? So hopefully you wrote hair and clothes. One thing when you write here is skin color. And we'll get back to the picture and talk about that. Well, my font's so big. Really want skin color to be a big important thing for me. Okay, and now, did their skin color actually change? And why would they do that? Okay, it's a question we'll answer why they do it later. But if you notice, this photo is the two photos are completely different photos in how they took the photo. Notice how dark the background is here, right? That's because they didn't use a lot of light. In this photo, they used a bunch of light, right? To make these students appear whiter. Now, why would they do that? Think to yourself, why would they do that? Right? And one thing hopefully you notice about this picture, these three boys are sitting in the exact same way they were sitting, exact same order they were sitting, except now they've given them chairs. Here they just made them sit on the floor and stand. They're obviously trying to show what? They're trying to show that now that we've educated these young men, now that we've educated these students, not only has their clothes and the way they sit and their hair changed, we've actually changed their skin color, right? We have literally tried to change their physical appearance, not and their biological appearance, right? So a couple other here. And this is the same young man. This is when he probably arrived. Many American Indian children were pretty much taken from their family and put in these schools. So when this young man arrived, he was in his traditional dress, right? And now look at what's changed. Another thing I think I noticed is look what they put him next to. Here they put him next to, right? They put him next to what appears to be an animal skin, okay? As if he chose to be by an animal skin. And here they put him by like some Western, more modern furniture, as if this is what the young man chose to show that, oh, look, he's more civilized. Essentially, what were they trying to say about the other culture? About American Indian culture, is the question. Kind of an older student. Now, would their skin complexion probably change a little bit because did many American Indians live very outdoor cultural lives? Yes, but not to this degree. This is photos, and they also put makeup on them to make them appear more whiter. They're trying to show that they had basically done what? Right? Last picture for you. This one always reminds me of the military. Like they were drafting these kids into the military, right? And training them how to be American, in other words, how to be white citizens of America. All right, so jump to your notes catcher. Why do you think they took these photos? Okay, and why make these photos? What are they trying to show you about American Indian culture? What are they trying to show you about the schools? And what are they trying to prove to American Indians and the rest of America? Pause the video and go ahead and fill that out. And this isn't, I'm not going to grade this one super hard, y'all. I just want to think for a second. Think for a second. Okay, cool. We're actually going to, don't worry, when we start class on Tuesday, we'll debrief that question. Okay, so this isn't a question I'm just going to not help you with. I want to see what you guys put first, and then we'll help you with it. Okay. Next up, we're going to do some document analysis between these two guys. Oh, let me change the font there so you guys can actually read it. So we're going to look at these two gentlemen. The gentleman on the left, the one I'm highlighting here, the white guy, this guy named Captain Pratt. He essentially was the principal of one of these schools. It was called the Carlisle American Indian Boarding School. Okay? And this guy right here, whoops, did the font. There we go. This guy right here was one of the students at these. You're seeing his picture when he was an adult, of course. This was 1933 when they took this picture. He actually wrote down his experience in 1933 at Carlisle School for the American Indians. So this guy you see on the left was a principal called Captain Pratt. This guy was this gentleman is named Luther Standing Bear. He was a student who attended one of these schools. Okay? So let's jump to our notes catcher. Before we read these documents, let's find out why we want to read these documents. Our job, and I'm going to help you with a couple of these. Our job is to find 5 cultural characteristics that the schools tried to change or destroy from American Indians. Okay? So pause the video. I want you to read through this yourself. And then when you get back, I will help you with it. And we'll help you with a couple of them, but you need to find a couple on your own. All right, so pause the video. Go. Okay, so again, the first document was Captain Pratt talking. He's talking about his beliefs about these schools. The second document, hopefully you figured out, was Luther Standing Bear talking about his life at the school. So let's start with Captain Pratt. All right. The most famous line from this from what he wrote here. It's right here. I'm going to highlight it for you. And he's talking about what he should do with American Indians, right? He says he doesn't want to see them killed. He doesn't want to see them massacred, right? He just wants to see the Indian in him killed and the man saved. In other words, kill his culture, change, destroy his culture, save the biological human being, and that's the humane thing to do, right? So right off the bat there, I know it's part of culture, but basically he's saying we need to change everything about their culture, right? Let's get into some specifics here, right? Which ones? So I mean, he focuses on some things we definitely have to change about them, right? The first one, or there's lots in here, but the one I want to talk about, right, is that they want to change their language, right? Their language. You can put some other ones if you want, but that's another one that they're going to change. Something they're definitely going to change is their language. We talked about the other day, right? Language is so vital to culture. It's important. If you can get all these people to stop speaking their American Indian languages and speak just English, really, how are they going to pass the culture on, right, to their children? You've essentially cut off their culture by changing their language. Okay? Your job now is to read through Luther Standing Bear, right? Find out. So these last three don't come from Captain Pratt. They come from Luther Standing Bear, okay? So pause the video, and I want you to write down 3 things that he says was changed about them. Then when you're done, right? Then when you're done, right here, I want you to write this summary. You need to answer this summary question right here. So I put a table in for you. Pick one of the things from above, okay? One of the things we found, except for number 1. You can't pick that one, okay? Pick anything from 2 or 5 and explain why you think, actually, no, wait. So only pick 3 or 5 since I helped you with language. So pick one of the 3 that you picked, okay? And tell me why would they change that thing about American Indians? Why would they destroy or change that thing? What would be the impact on American Indian culture? In other words, if they took this away or changed it, how would that help really take away their culture? Why would that piece be so vital? Okay? Pause the video and go ahead and do that. Okay. Hopefully you've paused the video and you filled those 2 out. You got those 3 of your own, and then you picked one of those 3 and you filled it out in the box. Okay, you said in the box, they changed this because it would do this to American Indian culture. Right? Now, your job the rest of this period is there's 3 YouTube videos I want you to watch. For the first 2 videos, okay, I want you to answer these 3 questions. The last video is connected to the exit ticket, okay? The last video, you don't have to watch. It's kind of helpful. It's 5 minutes. It can help you. But basically, your job is to summarize why there were boarding schools for Indians in the U.S. and Canada. Because Canada does the same thing. Canada called their schools residential schools, okay? Why were these built? How did they work? And what was their impact, okay? This needs to be at least 4 sentences. Okay? Turn this into Schoology when you're done. And that's what we have for today. If you don't finish this, go whatever pace you need to go. But I think you should be able to finish this. If not, we'll have probably some time next week definitely to finish it because next week's assignments won't be too bad. Won't be too long. Okay? All righty, y'all. I will see you in class right